The smell of polished wood and old paper hung in the courtroom. Judge Rupert Calloway leaned back in his leather chair. He looked over the top of his glasses at the woman standing at the defense table. "You must be Mrs. Ainsworth," he said. His voice was flat, but the corner of his mouth curled, the kind of smile a cat gives a wounded bird. Claudette Ainsworth lifted her chin. "Yes." "Your Honor, Mrs. Ainsworth." The judge said the name slowly. He let it hang, in the air. How interesting. He picked up a thick folder from his desk. He did not open it. He tapped it against the wood. Tap, tap, tap. "I have read the petition from your husband, Mr. Bradford. Ainsworth is asking for full custody of the 2 children. He is also asking the court to dismiss your claim on the family estate." The judge smiled wider. "And after reviewing your background, I have to say, I understand his concerns." The courtroom went quiet somewhere. A chair creaked. Claudette's hands gripped the edge of the table. Her knuckles turned pale. "Your Honor, with respect, I have evidence that—" "Evidence?" The judge laughed, a small, dry laugh. "Mrs. Ainsworth, let me explain something to you. This is Lee County, Alabama. We have certain standards here. A mother who waited tables before she met Mr. Ainsworth. A mother who came from, well, the kind of neighborhood she came from. That is not exactly what we look for when we decide where children should live." Gasps from the gallery. Someone whispered, "Did he just say that?" The judge held up his hand. "I am simply being honest. Honesty is something we value in this courtroom." He looked over at Bradford Ainsworth, who sat at the plaintiff's table in a charcoal gray suit. Bradford gave a small nod. The judge nodded back, like 2 old friends sharing a private joke. "Now," the judge continued, "I am giving you one chance to save yourself the embarrassment of a long trial. Sign the papers. Walk away. Take what Mr. Ainsworth has offered. It is more than fair." Claudette did not sit down. She did not cry. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small silver USB drive. She placed it on the table in front of her. "Your Honor," she said quietly, "before I sign anything, I would like the court to see what is on this." Judge Calloway's smile faded just a little. He did not know it yet, but that smile was about to die. "My name is Aaron. And before I start the story, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a hype at the end if you like it. Let me tell you where this story takes place. The Lee County Family Court Building sits on Main Street in Opelika, Alabama. It is a tall brick building with white columns and heavy wooden doors. Inside, the floors are dark marble. The walls are lined with portraits of old judges. Every single one of them is white. Every single one of them is a man. The hallway smells like floor wax and lemon polish, the kind of smell that says, "This place has rules, and those rules were not written for you." Opelika is a small town, about 30,000 people, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where last names matter, more than they should, where the country club has been standing for more than 100 years, where black families and white families still live in different parts of town most of the time. Nobody says this out loud, but it is the way things are. Now, let me tell you about Judge Rupert Calloway, because understanding him is important. He has worked in this building for 36 years. He grew up 2 streets away from the Ainsworth family. He played golf with Bradford's father every Sunday for almost 30 years, until the old man passed. When Bradford was a little boy, the judge used to bring him peppermint candies after church. When Bradford graduated from law school, the judge wrote one of his letters of recommendation. In other words, the judge and the husband were not strangers. They were practically family, but none of that was on paper. None of that was something Claudette could use to ask for a different judge now. Let me tell you about Claudette. She was born Claudette Whitfield in Pritchard, Alabama. Her mother cleaned houses for white families on the rich side of Mobile. Her father worked at the docks until his back. gave out when she was 9 years old. She grew up sharing a bedroom with 2 younger sisters. She wore her cousins' hand-me-down clothes. She walked 2 miles to school in shoes that had cardboard inside them when the soles wore through, but Claudette was sharper than anyone in her family had ever been. She got a full scholarship to Auburn University. She studied accounting. She graduated near the top of her class. And on the night of her graduation, while waiting tables at a steakhouse to pay her last month of rent, a tall man in a charcoal suit walked in and ordered a ribeye. That man was Bradford Ainsworth. Bradford was 32. Claudette was 23. He came from one of the oldest families in Lee County. His father owned 3 car dealerships, 2 strip malls, and a piece of a regional bank. The Ainsworth name was on a wing of the local hospital. It was on a scholarship at the high school. It was on the trophy at the country club. When Bradford brought Claudette home to meet his parents, the dinner lasted about 11 minutes. His mother smiled the whole time. The smile never reached her eyes. His father shook Claudette's hand and then went to wash his hands in the kitchen sink. They thought their son would get her out of his system in a few months. They thought wrong. Bradford married her anyway. Maybe to upset his parents. Maybe because he loved her. Maybe both. Even. Claudette was never quite sure for 14 years. She was Mrs. Ainsworth. She raised 2 children. A boy named Calvin, who was now 12A girl named Josephine, who was 9. She kept the books for Bradford's business. When he expanded into a 4th dealership, she built a small bakery of her own on 2nd Avenue that the locals called Claudette's. She paid her taxes. She went to PTA meetings. She sat in the back pew at the Ainsworth family church, even though nobody ever saved her a seat. And then, last spring, things changed. Bradford started coming home late. He stopped wearing his wedding ring. He told her he needed space. 2 months later, he filed for divorce. 3 weeks after that, he filed for full custody of the children. And 1 week after that, he filed to take the bakery, the house, and every cent of the joint savings. He claimed Claudette had been financially irresponsible and unfit as a mother. The lawyer he hired was the most expensive in the 3 counties. The judge assigned to the case was Rupert Calloway. The country club crowd was already whispering about who would get invited to the engagement party for Bradford and the new woman, a blonde paralegal named Whitney from Bradford's law firm in Opelika. Everyone knew how this story was supposed to end. The Ainsworth family always won. They had won for 120 years. Why would this be any different? But Claudette had spent the last 6 months doing something nobody knew about. She had been quiet. She had let Bradford think she was broken. She had let the judge think she was helpless. She had let the whole town think she would walk away with nothing and disappear back to Pritchard, where they all believed she belonged. That was the mistake. That was the mistake all of them made, because Claudette Whitfield Ainsworth had not been crying in her bedroom for 6 months. She had been working, and what she had built was sitting right now on a small silver USB drive on the defense table in Judge Rupert Calloway's courtroom. The judge stared at the silver drive on the table. He did not pick it up. He did not even lean forward. He smiled again, the same cold smile from before. "Mrs. Ainsworth," he said softly, "we do not play little tricks in this courtroom. We follow the law, and the law says that when you have been offered a fair settlement, you take it." He leaned forward now. "I am going to give you one more chance. Sign the papers, or this is going to get very embarrassing for you. Very fast." Claudette did not move. She did not pick up the pen. She did not even look at the papers. She just looked back at the judge. Calm. Steady. Her voice was soft, but it carried, "Your Honor, I will not be signing anything today. I am here to present evidence, and I am ready to begin when the court is." The judge's jaw tightened. He banged his gavel once. The sound was sharp. "This court will be in recess for 30 minutes. Counsel for the Petitioner will join me in chambers." He stood up fast. His black robe swung behind him. He walked out the side door without looking at Claudette again. Wendell Pruitt, Bradford's lawyer, gathered his papers in a hurry. Bradford followed his lawyer like a man walking behind his coach. The door to the judge's chambers closed with a heavy click inside the judge's office. The room was dark wood and hunting. Trophies. A framed photo on the wall showed Judge Calloway and Bradford's father standing on the 18th green at the country club in 1987, both of them holding golf clubs, both of them grinning. The judge sat down behind his big desk. He took off his glasses. He rubbed his eyes. Then he looked straight at Bradford. "What is on that drive, Bradford?" Bradford swallowed. "I do not know, sir. She never said anything. She has been quiet for months. Quiet women are dangerous. Son." The judge tapped his fingers on the desk. "I have been doing this for 36 years. Quiet women are the most dangerous kind." Wendell Pruitt cleared his throat. "Your Honor, even if she has documents, she is representing herself. She does not understand the rules of evidence. We can object to anything she tries to introduce. We can have it ruled inadmissible. By the time she figures out what hit her, this case will be closed." The judge nodded slowly. "Make sure of it, Wendell. This needs to be over today. The Ainsworth family has been good to this town for 120 years. They have been good to me, too. I am not going to let some bakery girl from Pritchard embarrass them. Or me." While the men plotted in chambers, Claudette sat alone on a hard wooden bench in the hallway outside. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs to make them stop. She reached into her wallet and pulled out a small photo. It was Calvin and Josephine at the beach 2 summers ago. Calvin had sand in his hair. Josephine was holding a seashell up to the camera and laughing. Claudette closed her eyes. She prayed the way her grandmother had taught her. Not loud, not fancy, just 3 words, over and over. "Lord, hold me, Lord, hold me, Lord, hold me." A janitor walked past with a mop bucket. He was an older black man, maybe 65 years old. His name was Festus Bell. He had worked in this building for 41 years. He stopped. When he saw Claudette, he did not say much. He just leaned on his mop for a second and looked at her with kind, tired eyes. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I have watched a lot of trials in this room. A lot. You hold on to whatever it is you brought with you today. Hold on tight." Then he picked up his bucket and kept walking down the hall. Claudette watched him go. She did not know that small moment was going to carry her through the next 2 hours, but it did. Something about being seen by someone who understood without asking. It steadied her. Down the other end of the hallway, Bradford was on his phone. He did not see Claudette sitting there. He was laughing. "Yes, baby, it will be done by lunch. We are celebrating tonight at the club. Wear that blue dress I bought you." He hung up. He walked right past Claudette without looking at her. He had stopped seeing her as a person months ago. That was the mistake. That was always the mistake. The bailiff called the courtroom back to order. Everyone stood. The judge walked back in. He sat down. He banged the gavel. Court is back in session. The court will now hear opening arguments from the petitioner. Wendell Pruitt stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He walked slowly to the center of the room. He was good at this. He had been doing it for 25 years. He spoke to the judge like he was speaking to a friend at dinner. He called Claudette financially unstable. He called her emotionally erratic. He hinted, gently, at her difficult upbringing. He talked about Bradford as a pillar of this community. He talked about the children needing stability. He said the offer Bradford was making, $10,000 and visitation 2 weekends a month, was extremely generous, all things considered. He said it like he was doing Claudette a favor. The judge nodded along the whole time. He even chuckled once when Wendell made a small joke. Bradford's mother sat in the front row in a cream-colored dress, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief that had her initials stitched into the corner. It was a performance. Everyone in that family knew how to perform. Then it was Claudette's turn. The judge looked at her. "Mrs. Ainsworth, you have 5 minutes to respond. Use them well." 5 minutes. 5 minutes to defend her entire life. 5 minutes to fight for her children. 5 minutes against a man who had been preparing his case for 6 months with the most expensive lawyer in 3 counties. Was a trap. The judge wanted her to talk. He wanted her to get emotional. He wanted her to fall apart on camera so the case would be over, before any evidence was ever seen. Claudette stood up. She held the USB drive in her hand. She did not raise. Her voice, "Your Honor, with respect, I will not be making a personal speech today. I am here to present evidence under Alabama Rule of Civil Procedure 43. I have the right to introduce documentary evidence at trial. I am exercising that right now." The judge's smile flickered. He had not expected her to know the rule. He had not expected her to know any rules at all. He waved his hand. "Mrs. Ainsworth, the court will decide what evidence is appropriate." Sit down. She did not sit down. The gallery shifted. People were watching now. Really watching. Now we have to go back. We have to go back 6 months. Because the woman standing in front of that judge did not become that woman by accident. She became her in the dark. In a basement office alone. Let me tell you how. It was a Tuesday night in March. Claudette was in the kitchen of the big house on Magnolia Street. She was wrapping leftover meatloaf in foil. The kitchen clock said 11:15. Bradford had said he would be home by 7. He walked through the door smelling like a perfume that was not hers. He did not look at her. He poured himself a glass of bourbon. He drank, it standing up. Then he set the glass down and said, in a voice as flat as if he was reading the weather, "I am filing for divorce in the morning." Claudette did not say anything. She kept wrapping the meatloaf. Bradford kept going. "You should not bother fighting me, Claudette. You know how this is going to go. I have lawyers. I have the money. I have the name. You have nothing. Honey, you came from nothing. I will make sure you go back to nothing. It will be easier for everyone if you just take what I offer." Then he walked upstairs to the guest bedroom. He closed the door. Claudette stood alone in the kitchen for a long time. She did not cry. Not one tear. Something inside her went cold and clear. Something inside her hardened, like water turning to ice in the freezer. That night she went down to the basement office. The basement was where Bradford kept his work files. The basement was where she had been doing the books for his dealerships for 9 years. She knew every E2 account. She knew every password. She had never used any of that knowledge for anything except her job. Until that night, she turned on the laptop. She started looking. In the first month, she found things. She found a second checking account at a bank in Birmingham that she had never seen before. She found wire transfers going out to a name she did not know. Whitney Carlisle. She looked up the name. He was a paralegal at Bradford's law firm. I am 26 years old. Blonde pretty, in the way magazines tell women they should look. Claudette found the lease on an apartment in Auburn. Bradford had been paying for it since the previous July 8 months. She found receipts for jewelry that had never come home to her. None of it was illegal. Not yet, but it was the beginning of a paper trail. And Claudette was very good at paper trails. In the second month, she dug deeper. She started comparing the dealership inventory records to the federal tax filings. She had done this work 100 times, but this time she was looking for something. And she found it. There were cars on the federal filings that did not exist on the lot's ghost vehicles written off as business losses for at least 4 years. She matched serial numbers. She cross-checked vendor invoices. She built a spreadsheet. The total gap, the amount Bradford had hidden from the government, was $640,000. This was not just cheating on his wife. This was tax fraud, federal tax fraud, the kind that ends in handcuffs. Claudette sat in the basement at 3 in the morning with her finger over the print button. She could end him in an afternoon. One phone call to the IRS, one envelope mailed to the right office. He would be gone. The Ainsworth family would crumble. The whole town would watch it burn. But she had 2 children to think about, Calvin and Josephine. If their father went to federal prison, they would carry that for the rest of their lives. Every school, every job interview, every time they met someone new. "Oh, your father is the one who—" Claudette closed the laptop. She made a decision right there in the dark. She would only use this if she absolutely had to. She would only use it to protect her children, not to destroy their father. There was a difference, a small one, but it mattered. She needed help. She could trust. She thought for a long time. Then she remembered. There had been a professor at Auburn, years back, a woman named Loretta Ashford Green. She had taught forensic accounting. Claudette had taken her class in her senior year. The woman had once said something Claudette never forgot. She had said, "Numbers do not lie. People lie about numbers. But the numbers themselves will always tell you the truth, if you know how to listen." Claudette found her. Mrs. Ashford Green had retired and moved to Tuskegee. She was 73 years old. She had testified in 3 federal cases in her career. Claudette drove 90 minutes on a Saturday morning. With a thick folder in the passenger seat, she knocked on the door of a small yellow house with a porch swing. Mrs. Ashford Green opened the door. She looked at Claudette for a long moment. Then she said, "Come in, baby. Coffee is on." They sat at the kitchen table. Mrs. Ashford Green opened the folder. She did not say a word for 40 minutes. She turned page after page. She made small marks on a yellow legal pad. She drank her coffee. Finally, she took off her reading glasses. She set them on the table. She looked at Claudette. "Baby," she said, "you have enough here to put that man in a federal building for 15 years. The question is, what do you actually want?" Claudette thought about it. She thought about her children. She thought about her bakery. She thought about her grandmother, who used to say, "Revenge is heavy, child justice is light. Carry the light one." Claudette looked Mrs. Ashford Green in the eye and said, "I want my children. I want my bakery. I want my house. I do not want a war. But I will burn the whole thing down if I have to." Mrs. Ashford Green nodded slowly. "Then let me show you how to bring a match into a courtroom without it looking like a match." Over the next 4 months, the 2 women worked in secret. They met every Saturday, sometimes in Tuskegee, sometimes in a coffee shop in a town halfway between them. They organized the documents into folders. They built a timeline. They made backup copies. They put the originals in a safety deposit box at a credit union where the Ainsworth family did not bank. Mrs. Ashford Green taught Claudette how to present financial evidence in plain language, the kind of language that a judge could not dismiss, the kind of language that an 8th grader could understand. She said, "When you talk to a judge, you do not need to sound smart. You need to sound clear. Clear is what wins." She taught Claudette how to anticipate every objection they practiced like it was a stage play. Mrs. Ashford Green played the judge. Mrs. Ashford Green played the lawyer. She would shout, "Objection, relevance," and Claudette would have to answer, calmly, quickly, correctly. They did this for weeks. They did this until Claudette could do it in her sleep. Then Mrs. Ashford Green did something else, something Claudette had not asked. 4. She picked up the phone and made a call to an old friend at the Alabama Bar Association, a woman named Sylvia Marchetti. Mrs. Ashford Green and Sylvia had known each other for 40 years. "Sylvia, honey," Mrs. Ashford Green said, "I need you to pull every divorce case Judge Rupert Callaway has presided over in the last 6 years. Everyone. And I need you to pull his campaign finance reports for the last 22 years. Quietly, 3 weeks later, a manila envelope arrived in the mail. What was inside was very interesting. The judge had presided over 4 other divorce cases in the past 6 years where the husband was a personal friend or business associate. In every single one of those cases, the wife had lost everything, house, money, sometimes the children, and in one of those cases the husband had been Bradford's own father. The wife in that case had been a black woman from Selma, Alabama, named Odessa Ainsworth. She had been Bradford's stepmother for 3 years. From 2006 to 2009, Claudette had never heard her name before. Not once. In 14 years of being part of this family, no one had ever mentioned her. The family had buried that story like it never happened. Claudette tracked Odessa down. She made some calls. She drove out to Anniston, Alabama, on a rainy Friday afternoon. She knocked on the door of a small apartment in a building with peeling paint. Odessa opened the door. She was 58 years old. She worked at a hospital cafeteria. Her hair was gray at the temples. Her eyes were tired but sharp. When Odessa saw Claudette standing there, she knew before Claudette said one word. She knew, "You are the new one, are you not? The one Bradford married? Yes, ma'am. Come in, baby. Sit down. I have been waiting for you to find me. I knew you would, eventually." For 3 hours, Odessa told Claudette everything. The fake financial records that had been used against her in 2009. The judge is in the pocket of the family. The whispers around town that had ruined her name before she could even fight back. The day she was put out. Of the house with 2 suitcases and $300. The way no one in town would hire her after the divorce. The way she had moved to Anniston to start over and never looked back. They do this. Claudette. They have a pattern. Bradford's daddy did it to me. Now Bradford is doing it to you. The judge helps them every time. He has always helped them. Odessa reached across the table and put her hand on Claudette's. "Honey, I tried to fight. I had no one. No money for a lawyer, no witness, no proof. I lost everything but you. Baby, you are not alone. You have a witness now. You have me. Whatever you need, you tell me I will sign whatever you need me to sign. I will say whatever you need me to say. It is time." Claudette cried in her car for 20 minutes in the parking lot before she could drive home 2 weeks before trial. Claudette and Mrs. Ashford Green finalized everything. The USB drive had 4 folders on it. Folder 1 was the financial records Bradford's hidden checking account in Birmingham, the wire transfers to Whitney, the apartment lease in Auburn. The jewelry receipts, Folder 2, was the tax fraud, the phantom inventory, the federal filings, the spreadsheet that explained the $640,000 gap in language any person could follow. Folder 3 was Odessa's sworn affidavit, signed and notarized with the original 2009 court documents attached. Folder 4 was the campaign donations. 22 years of contributions from the Ainsworth family business to Judge Callaway's re-election campaigns. The total amount was $186,000. They made 3 copies of the drive. One went into the safety deposit box at the credit union. One went to a journalist at the Montgomery Advertiser named Nadine Eubanks, who had agreed in writing to publish everything if anything happened to Claudette. And one was the small silver drive Claudette was now carrying into the courtroom. The morning of trial, Claudette woke up at 4 in the morning. She made coffee. She kissed the photos of her sleeping children, who were staying at Bradford's mother's house under court order. She put on a simple navy dress. No jewelry except her grandmother's small gold cross on a thin chain. She drove to the courthouse alone. She had told no one she had a plan. Not. Even Mrs. Ashford Green knew about one last thing Claudette had done. Claudette had called Nadine Eubanks the night before and asked her to come to the courthouse and live-stream the trial from a seat in the public gallery Claudette wanted. The truth on the public record before the judge could ever bury it. That brings us back. Back to the courtroom. Back to the moment, Claudette standing. The judge waved his hand at her. The 5 minutes are ticking. The USB drive on the table, HUD. Judge said, "Sit down, Mrs. Ainsworth." Claudette did not sit down. She said, "Your Honor, I would like to enter Exhibit A into the record, a financial document showing transactions made by the petitioner during the marriage." Wendell Pruitt jumped to his feet. Objection. Your Honor, relevance, authenticity, chain of custody. He listed them fast, the way he had been taught. 3 objections in one breath. Most people without a lawyer would have crumbled right there. Claudette did not crumble. She had practiced this with Mrs. Ashford Green for 2 months. Your Honor, on relevance, the petitioner's attorney has just told this court that I am financially irresponsible. The financial records I am presenting directly answer that claim. On authenticity, I have notarized affidavits from the bank attached to every page on chain of custody. I have timestamps, original bank confirmation letters, and a forensic accountant who is willing to testify under oath. The room was quiet. Wendell sat back down slowly. He had not expected any of that. He had expected a panicked woman. He had gotten a prepared one. The judge cleared his throat. He had no choice. If he denied the evidence on grounds she had already answered, the entire trial could be thrown out on appeal, and he knew the news cameras were rolling. He gritted his teeth. The evidence will be allowed. Proceed. Claudette walked to the court clerk. She handed her the drive. The clerk plugged it into. The courtroom monitor folder 1 opened on the big screen above the bench. The numbers were big. The numbers were clear. The hidden checking account at the bank in Birmingham. The balance, $94,000. The wire transfers to Whitney. Carlisle, $41,000 over 8 months. The apartment in Auburn, $1,600 a month for 14 months. The receipts for jewelry. A diamond bracelet, a pair of earrings. A pendant, Bradford's face turned the color. Of a brick, Bradford's mother stopped dabbing her eyes. The gallery started to whisper. Someone in the back row said, "Oh my God!" The journalist in the 3rd row was filming on her phone in addition to the live stream. The judge banged his gavel for quiet. He was rattled now. You could see it in his shoulders. 5-minute recess. He banged the gavel again. 5 minutes. Claudette did not move from the table during the recess. She sat very still. She drank a small sip of water from the cup. The bailiff had left her. She did not look at Bradford. She did not look at the gallery. She just looked, straight ahead at the wall, calm like a woman. Waiting for a bus court resumed. The judge tried to take control. He said, "The financial misconduct of Mr. Ainsworth, while regrettable, does not affect the question of custody. The court will note it and move on." Claudette stood up again. "Your Honor, I have additional evidence." The judge snapped, "Mrs. Ainsworth, you have made your point." She did not back down. Her voice stayed soft. "Your Honor, with respect, I have not made my point, yet I have shown." The court, 1 folder out of 4, gasps from the gallery. The judge's eyes twitched. He looked at Wendell Pruitt. Wendell looked back at him. There was nothing they could do. The cameras were rolling. The journalist was in the gallery. The judge nodded stiffly. "Continue." Folder 2 opened on the screen. The tax fraud documents. Claudette walked the court through it the way Mrs. Ashford Green had taught her. In plain language, no fancy words, no accountant talks, she said, "Your Honor, the petitioner has been reporting cars to the government that do not exist on the lots. Here is the list of cars on the federal filings. Here is the list of cars that were actually on the lots. The difference between the 2 lists, is $640,000. That is money." The petitioner has hidden from the federal government over 4 years. The room went dead silent. You could hear the second hand of the clock on the back wall. Even the bailiff was staring. Bradford's lawyer leaned over and whispered urgently in Bradford's ear. Bradford had gone pale. He looked like he might be sick. He was finally realizing that his wife had been 3 moves ahead of him for 6 months, while he had been busy buying jewelry for Whitney. Judge Calloway tried one more time to stop it. He said, "This court is not a forum for unproven accusations of federal crimes. If Mrs. Ainsworth has concerns about her husband's taxes, she can take them to the IRS. We are here to decide custody and the marital estate." Claudette nodded politely. "I agree, Your Honor. I am only entering this evidence because Mr. Ainsworth's attorney has claimed I am financially irresponsible. The court has a right to see who the financially irresponsible party actually is. She had trapped him. He had to either let it in, or he would look like he was protecting Bradford on live television. He gritted his teeth so hard you could see his jaw move. Aloud. Claudette took a small breath. Now came the hard part. She looked at the judge. "Your Honor, the next folder concerns the integrity of this court itself. I would like to request a moment of the court's patience." Wendell Pruitt jumped up shouting, "Objection! Objection, Your Honor! This is an attack on the court." The judge slammed his gavel. He pointed at Claudette. His voice was loud now, loud and tight. "Mrs. Ainsworth, any attack on this court will be treated as contempt. You will be removed, and you will sleep in a jail cell tonight. Do you understand me?" She stayed calm. Her voice did not shake. "I am not attacking the court, Your Honor. I am introducing a sworn affidavit from a witness in a prior case heard by this court. The witness is Mrs. Odessa Ainsworth." The judge's face changed. Right there, in front of everyone. The color drained out of it. He had not heard that name in 15 years. He thought it was buried forever. He looked over at Bradford. Bradford was staring at his hands folder. 3 opened on the screen. Odessa's sworn statement filled the monitor. It described the 2009 case in detail. The fake financial claims used against her, the judge who had laughed in her face. The settlement she had been forced to sign with no lawyer of her own. The pattern matched what was happening, to Claudette so exactly that the gallery started to whisper, then murmur, then talk out loud. The same judge, the same family, the same fake claims, the same outcome was predicted before the trial. Even began, Bradford's mother stood up in the front row. Her cream-colored dress was wrinkled now. Her perfect hair was coming loose. She pointed at Claudette. "How dare you? How dare you bring up that woman in this courtroom?" The bailiff stepped toward her. She sat back down hard. The journalist in the third row was no longer pretending to be subtle. She was openly filming. The live stream counter on her phone had climbed 18,000 viewers, 23,000 climbing. Every minute, Judge Calloway banged his gavel 4 times. He called for order. His voice cracked on the third bang. The gavel slipped a little in his hand before he could recover, before he could call another recess, before Wendell Pruitt could think of another objection. Claudette spoke again. Calm, steady, Your Honor. The final folder, folder 4, opened on the screen. The campaign donations. 22 years of contributions. From the Ainsworth family business to Judge Calloway's re-election campaigns. Year by year. Check by check. Receipt by receipt. The screen scrolled slowly down the list. $5,000 in 2003. $8,000 in 2005. $12,000 in 2008. $15,000 in 2011. On and on, year after year, then the total at the bottom. In big. Plain numbers. $186,000. The number sat there. Big black, undeniable. The gallery gasped. Bradford's lawyer dropped his pen. The judge's gavel slipped out of his hand and clattered onto the wooden bench. He did. not pick it up. He just stared at the screen. 22 years of his career, 22 years of a friendship that had paid him in checks and golf games, all laid out in plain view for the whole town to see, for the live stream to broadcast. Claudette closed the folder. The screen went black. She stood up straight. Her voice was clear and steady. Your Honor, based on the evidence I have presented today, I am formally requesting two things. First, that you recuse yourself from this case immediately due to a clear conflict of interest. Second, that the court hold the petitioner's claims in abeyance. Pending an investigation by the appropriate authorities, she had used the legal words exactly right. Mrs. Ashford Green had drilled her on those two words, recuse, abeyance. The judge could not pretend not to understand. No one in that courtroom. Bradford stood up suddenly. He slammed his fist on the table. He shouted at Wendell Pruitt. He shouted at Claudette. He shouted at the judge. Do something. Make her stop. This is a setup. She is a liar. She has always been a liar. The bailiff stepped toward him. Wendell Pruitt grabbed Bradford's arm and tried to pull him back down into his chair. Bradford yanked his arm free. He was breathing hard. His face was red. His tie was crooked. The mask he had worn for 14 years was gone. The gallery was staring. The cameras caught every second the Ainsworth family name. Untouchable in Lee County for 120 years was breaking in real time, on a live stream. In front of 47,000 viewers, Judge Calloway sat very still. His hands were trembling. He put them flat on the bench to stop them. He looked at the dark screen where the donations had been. He looked at the journalist in the third row. He looked at the gallery. He looked at Bradford. He looked at Claudette. He knew the live stream was rolling. He knew the journalist. Had everything he knew that if he tried to bury this now, his career and his pension and his name would be gone by the end of the week. The Alabama Bar Association would open an investigation by Monday. The state attorney general would have to look at the campaign donations by Tuesday. The IRS would be on the dealerships by Wednesday. In a quiet, defeated voice, he said the words, "The court will recuse itself from this matter. A new judge will be assigned within 7 days. The petitioner's motions for custody and asset transfer are denied, pending further review." He banged the gavel. One last time. The sound was small. He did not look at Claudette. He did not look at Bradford. He stood up slowly. His black robe hung on him like it suddenly did not fit. He walked out of his own courtroom like a man walking to his own funeral. Claudette walked out of the courtroom. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The journalist, Nadine Eubanks, ran up to her with questions. Claudette politely said she would give a full statement later in the day. She walked past Bradford, who was sitting on a bench in the hallway with his head in his hands. His mother was screaming at Wendell Pruitt 3 feet away. How did this happen? How did you let this happen? Wendell did not have an answer. Claudette did not stop walking. She walked past all of them. She walked down the marble hallway. She walked past the portraits of the old white judges on the walls. She walked out through the heavy wooden doors. She walked down the white columns. She walked into the parking lot. The sun was high in the sky now. It was almost noon. A small old Buick was parked under a tree. Mrs. Loretta Ashford Green was leaning against the hood. She was 73 years old. She had driven over from Tuskegee that morning. She had been waiting in the parking lot the whole time. She did not say a word when Claudette walked up. She just opened her arms. Claudette walked into them. The two women stood there for a long minute under the tree. The mentor and the student. The teacher and the woman she had. Taught how to bring a match into a courtroom finally. Mrs. Ashford Green stepped back. She put her hands on Claudette's shoulders. She looked at her. "Now," she said softly. "Now go get your babies." Claudette drove to a small park a few miles from the courthouse. She sat down on a bench under a magnolia tree. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were finally still. She called Calvin and Josephine on FaceTime. They were at Bradford's mother's house. Calvin answered. He looked worried. He had been crying. Josephine peeked over his shoulder. "Mom." "Hi, baby." "Mom, are you coming?" "Yes, baby, I am coming. Right now, I am coming to pick you up. We are going home, to our home." Calvin's face changed. The worry started to leave it. "Mom, did you win?" Claudette smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all day, maybe the first time in 6 months. "Baby." Mommy did not lose. That is what matters. She drove to her mother-in-law's house. She walked up to the door. She rang the bell. Bradford's mother opened the door. Her face was a wreck. Claudette did not say one word to her. She just looked past. Her at her children. "Calvin, Josephine, grab your bags." The kids ran past their grandmother and out the door. Bradford's mother started to say something. Claudette held up one hand. "Not today, not ever again." She turned around and walked. Her children to her car. Then came the week after. The new judge was assigned on Friday. Her name was Cecily Hargrove. She was from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, by way of 40 years on the bench. She read the case file in one afternoon. She made phone calls. The Internal Revenue Service opened an investigation into Bradford's dealerships on Monday morning. 3 federal agents showed up at the main location with a search warrant. They left with 17 boxes of records. Whitney Carlisle left Bradford the day she saw the live stream. She did not even pack. She just walked out of the apartment in Auburn with her purse. The Ainsworth family quietly removed Bradford from the company board on Tuesday. The family lawyer suggested he might want to leave the state for a while. The bakery on 2nd Avenue, which had been in Bradford's name, was officially transferred to Claudette's name on Wednesday. The new judge signed the order in 12 minutes. Calvin and Josephine were back in their own bedrooms by Thursday night. Their mother made them spaghetti. With meatballs, Calvin ate 3 plates. Josephine asked if she could sleep in her mother's bed that night. Claudette said yes. Judge Rupert Callaway announced his early retirement, effective immediately. The following Monday, the Alabama Bar Association announced an investigation that same afternoon. Odessa Ainsworth got a phone call from a civil rights attorney in Birmingham who wanted to reopen her 2009 case. She said yes. Before he finished the sentence, the story ran on the front page of the Montgomery Advertiser, then the Birmingham News. Then it went national. Nadine Eubanks won an award for her reporting 6 months later. On a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after the trial, Claudette was back in her bakery on 2nd Avenue. She was there at 5:30 in the morning, the way she had been almost every morning for 9 years. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. She was wiping down the front counter when the bell over the door rang. The first customer of the day walked in. It was Festus Bell, the old janitor from the courthouse. He was wearing his Sunday cap. Even though it was a weekday, he took it off when he walked in. He held it in his hands. "Morning, Mrs. Ainsworth." "Morning, Mr. Bell. What can I get you?" "A cup of coffee black, and one of them biscuits, if you got 'em." She poured the coffee. She put the biscuit on a small plate. He pulled out his wallet. He laid a $5 bill on the counter. Claudette looked at the bill. Then she looked at him. She picked up the bill. She slid it back across the counter. She slid the biscuit and the coffee toward him. "Mr. Bell," she said softly, "your money is no good here. Not today, not ever." His old eyes got a little wet. He nodded. He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "I told you to hold on, ma'am." "Yes, sir." "You did." He took his coffee and his biscuit. He sat down at the small table by the window. The morning sun was coming up over Main Street. The light was coming through the window onto the table. Festus Bell ate his biscuit slowly. He looked out the window at the town of Opelika. Alabama, the town that had been built on 120 years of one family's name, the town that had just learned something new, and Claudette Whitfield Ainsworth, the bakery girl from Pritchard, Alabama, who once walked 2 miles to school in shoes with cardboard inside them, went back to work. If you have ever walked into a room where the people inside already decided who you were before you opened your mouth, this story is for you. The walls had already chosen against Claudette. The judge had already chosen against her. The whole town had already chosen against her. None of that mattered in the end. What mattered was what she carried in with her. What mattered was that she had been quiet for 6 months while everyone underestimated her. What mattered was that when the moment came, she did not raise her voice. She raised the evidence. She did not win because she was angry. Anger is loud and easy and short. She won because she was patient. She won because she was prepared. She won because she stayed quiet until every single piece was in place. And then she put them on the table one at a time and let the room read them for itself. If you have ever been Claudette, sitting in a room where they already wrote the ending of your story before you walked in, leave a comment below. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you and you stayed quiet until you had everything you needed. Tell me what you carried into that room. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it today. Someone in your life is sitting in that hallway, right now, on a hard wooden bench, holding a photo of their children in their wallet, praying for someone to walk past and tell them to hold on. Maybe this story is the person walking past. And if you have not already, subscribe, because the next story is already waiting.